Our first panelist is a former area director of Areva, an organization called Areva. He might be able to tell us a bit about what Areva means. And secondly, he was the segment manager of ABB. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and help me welcome Mr. Shabir Jafaji. A round of applause for him. A round of applause for him. Please keep clapping until he comes on the stage. Thank you, sir. Most welcome. Please take a seat. Karibu sana, Bwana Shabir. Our second panelist is the board chair of UNREEA Uganda. I am proud to be able to say that as we began the gender and environment equality discussion yesterday, again we are pleased and privileged to have a lady panelist with us, Madam Lorraine Danford. Welcome to the stage. Welcome. A round of applause for her. And the person who will be, no, sorry, apologies for that. I didn't get that clear. The person who I announced as the board chair for UNREEA from Uganda, I'll tell you his name in a bit. But let me recognize Madam Laura correctly. Madam Lorraine Danford is the co-founder and CEO of Safi Analytics. A round of applause for her. I believe when they're beginning, they'll tell us a bit about what they do, and we'll be able to just flow with them in the conversation. And so now, last but definitely not least, the board chair of UNREEA from Uganda is Alexander Komakech Akena. A round of applause for him.
With me here we have Mr. Shabir, we have Alexander, they have been introduced, and I think I will allow you to give small remarks. Hivi unaweza ongea Kiswahili pia? Yes, Kiswahili. And as you introduce yourself and what you do, there is one area about storage. Nataka utuelezee kidogo. How come the storage pricing is not going down? There's something you mentioned about counterfeits. Don't forget to tell us something about that in the whole area of energy storage. Thank you. Karibu.
I'm Shabir Jafaji. I've already been introduced. I'm going to talk about energy storage. Mercy asked me what is Areva. Areva has been there for years. It is a nuclear engineering company. But long time back, that was sometimes in 9/11, after 9/11, I was with ABB before that, and from ABB, Alstom and ABB combined generation. A new company was formed called ABB Alstom Power, and due to that merger, I had to move from ABB to Alstom, ABB Alstom Power. That marriage lasted 6 months or 8 months. The ABB Alstom Power marriage, due to some problems, and they had to divorce. ABB was asked to continue with T&D business. Power generation was taken over by Alstom, and I remained with Alstom due to the merger. Come 9/11, a lot of problems. Most of these companies, the share market, the shares collapsed and all that. Alstom was in serious problem at that time, and I think the French government bailed Alstom out by asking or sort of pursuing Areva to take over the T&D business of Alstom. So Areva acquired one of the largest T&D companies, which was, and formed a separate business segment called Areva T&D, Transmission and Distribution. And I got the transfer into Areva T&D, and I was area director for Areva T&D until 2007, when I retired. That's Areva. Merci. I hope I've answered. Energy storage. It's very interesting. But before I go into energy storage, coming to Simon's comments, it reminded me of somebody said, when the winds of change blow, don't go into hiding. Start building windmills. So, when the winds of change blow, let's start building windmills. Energy storage. Energy storage was not considered an important business or important field, I think even 5 years ago. But lately, and in the last 5 years, I've seen tremendous growth, attention being focused, a lot of development in this field. And this is because renewable energy is also taking a prominent, becoming a prominent sector in the energy field. Just to mention, I think about 10-15 years ago, solar modules were selling at $3 per watt, $3 to $3.5 per watt. And if you work out the economics, you could never get power out of solar. It wasn't grid parity, as we put it. You know, the power was so expensive from solar. If you work out the financial cost and all that, that was about just 10 years back. Today, if you look at the price of solar module, it has fallen down to almost $0.7, and that's a big reduction. Energy from solar can be sold now. At one time, we were reluctant to go into solar because of high costs. Today, energy from solar, I think the PPA, the power purchase agreement, in quite a number of countries are below 4 cents or 3 cents per kilowatt hour. A lot of projects in India are negotiated at 3 and 4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's that low. It's much lower than grid power. To make it still more attractive, you know, this renewable power has what we call a lot of intermittency. Wind has a lot of intermittency, and solar has. But solar has a beautiful curve. The intermittency comes when the clouds come in. But otherwise, the solar curve is like almost, if there is no intermittency, it is guaranteed power. On the other hand, the wind can be very, it can fluctuate in very short time from full 100 megawatts to maybe 30 megawatts. The wind goes down suddenly. So that intermittency has to be taken care of. Although the power is cheap from wind, but this intermittency has to be taken care of. And that's where energy storage comes in. That can help and make wind what we call technically the frequency response becomes very stable with energy storage devices. And energy storage has basically a lot of advantages. And the cost, as the moderator James said, why is it not coming down? I'll come to that. On energy storage, let's first look into the technology. Technology-wise, the first thing which comes to mind is batteries. But I'll come to batteries in more detail. But batteries is not the only storage device. There is what you call CAES, CAES. This is compressed air energy systems for large systems, especially grid related. CAES has been tried, and a lot of research is going on. Not only research, but there are also some commercialized systems. There is flywheels as energy storage, large big flywheels. There is pump storage, hydro, and hydro is just part of the gravity storage systems. It comes under the gravity storage system. So there are all these various other storage systems. I have decided we'll concentrate. Storage is a big subject. I mean, it's lots, and I think in one small session we cannot cover everything on storage. You know, and like there's special conferences for 2 and 3 days just on energy storage in Europe, America, and anyhow, whatever is possible, I'll try to cover within this short time I've been given. I'll talk of batteries particularly, and batteries has a lot of relevance in our region here for as storage devices. There is something called dispatchable power. When you are looking into PPAs, this is power purchase agreement. Normally, if you give them dispatchable power, thank you. So, we'll talk of batteries. Batteries are of 3 types. The most common is the lead acid based batteries. Then there is lithium ion batteries and salt water batteries. This is from the normal batteries for domestic and commercial applications. For large grid type, there is redox batteries. And we have to be very careful when choosing batteries and selecting batteries. The economics, you know, especially, and the type of batteries. Batteries have a cost for storing. These have all to be looked into. The cost per kilowatt hour and the life cycle. The gains and risks is what I had to concentrate on. The gains are many. The advantages are many. What are the risks? The risks are counterfeits. You can get into counterfeit batteries. You are told this battery has a life of 500 cycles or maybe 500, 1.5 year, 18 months. If it is a counterfeit battery, the life may be not even 1 year, you know, and you wasted a lot of money. There are ways to identify the rating. Batteries have a rating, 100 ampere hour, 50 ampere hour. What is the C rating? Is it C10 rating? Ask the supplier. C20 rating. If it is counterfeit battery, he will not know what's the rating. But a good manufacturer will tell you, my 100 ampere hour battery is C10 rating. That means you can get 100 ampere hours for 10 hours if you operate within 10 hours. These are some of the details, technical details, but they are very easy to grasp. It's not rocket science. Basically it's DC, fundamentals, voltage, ampere, Ohm's law, and batteries. Batteries are quite easy to understand. I'm short of time actually, there's so much to talk. But thank you.
Thank you.
I want you to answer more questions from the team because we spoke a few minutes ago and he has a lot of in-depth knowledge of the battery market. So hold your questions as also the other members of the panel introduce themselves. So I think the lady in the house can introduce herself. Sifa Analytics. We talked a few minutes, you mesmerized me. And I think I just want, just tell us what is it all about. You have 5 minutes to tell us. Yes.
Terrific. Well, thank you all. I'm honored to be here and particularly grateful to the members of the audience, the many members who have helped us advise in creating SAFI Analytics. My background is that I've spent the past few years at Stanford University looking specifically at the energy space in Kenya in partnership with folks like Chris, and looking at this gap that exists between the talented, amazing providers of energy audits and solutions and the gap in good data and specifically good usable software to manage and monitor energy real time. And so now I've moved to Kenya full time for the foreseeable future. My husband is here, so that's the ulterior motive. And I'm working with a team to focus on specifically software and monitoring energy to be useful to the sector as a whole. So I won't speak for long while up here. Hopefully you'll hit us with lots of great questions. But I do encourage you to come find me if you have ideas on how real-time energy monitoring that's accessible on smartphone, on laptop, for not just the energy incoming to a facility, but also the key loads and devices within that facility, how you'd like that to be useful to you in your work. We've seen it can be useful for sizing energy solutions, for noticing when equipment is idle. We have a dashboard and real-time alerts built in. I can show you the first draft of the software to any of you who are interested. And then what's really key is that the data be made actionable, not just to providers of energy solutions or energy auditors, but also to the teams within the buildings or factory who are engaged every single day in noticing when a piece of equipment is operating inefficiently or left idle at the wrong time. So that's what we're specializing in reaching folks on their smartphones and on their laptops with software that's usable to them and then can enable efficient remote partnerships with energy auditors and providers of energy solutions. Hit me with any questions that you have during, and I'll just re-articulate. We're here to learn. What we want to do is be supportive to the ecosystem as a whole. So please come find me and tell me what you'd like, and we've got a team that specializes in the software to do it.
Wow. Now, we would like also to have a friend from Uganda. I'm sure I'll be having lunch with you after this, since I'm in Uganda for the last 2 months. And tell us something about energy efficiency integration and operational excellence. Tell us something about it, and what we want the panelists to tell us is that how is this story of batteries influencing change in Africa? How is it influencing the storyline in Africa? Yes, you have got the data. How can it influence behavior in factory? How can storage be part of a big thing in this region? We have seen Australia is trying to put something great in the market. And our friend from Uganda, tell us something.
I'll stand here. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I've been a silent witness in the room since yesterday, and I think there's been a lot of good deliberation that has taken place in this workshop. My name is Alexander Kumakech Akena. I think Mercy pronounced that very well. UNREA is how we say it. It's not UNEEA. So UNREA, actually, I know it's a mouthful of an acronym. UNREA stands for Uganda National Energy, Uganda National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance. My ED would kill me if I didn't say this right. So actually, we were debating on who should come. So whether the ED should come or the chairman should come. And at some point, we said, I think maybe the ED should come. And then at the last minute, they pushed me here, and it's nice to meet with the entire team. So I come from the neighborhood, that is Uganda, a small country. So usually we have a lot of noise. You know, when you're small, you compensate for the noise. You know. So that's what happens. So UNREA actually is a galvanizing voice, which is an umbrella institution, bringing together 6 associations. And the difference between us and here is we don't have a chapter. I think Pascal mentioned this shortly. But however, we have an Association of Energy Efficiency Auditor, an Energy Efficiency Association of Uganda. So basically it brings together also all the practitioners, which we are actually trying to push it to have a chapter. So in Engineer Simon and Chris, we are coming for you guys. Well, I think it's also just, I like just make this commendation for the Kenyan sector. I think Uganda has benefited a lot from the Kenyan sector. It's a fully matured sector that energy efficiency here is taken up, and a lot of experts. And so I'm actually honored to sit here and then you guys listen. I'm no expert at all, but I think there's so many experts here. I've actually been benefited from the mentorship of so many Kenyans who have come to Uganda to develop a couple of programs there. And yeah, so the 2 countries benefit in this way that sometimes we copy from each one's failure. So I know most of the times Uganda, we are very fast at developing policy, but then we share them. However, sometimes the Kenyans come and say, how did they fail? And then they come and make it better. So that's the same thing. So what we're trying to borrow this time is also, how do we improve our energy efficiency sector and make it better? So yes, that is, as the board chairman, a new board chairman, we are basically, our work is trying to improve the engagement of the different associations, basically create the right environment that business can prosper, as well as dialogue with government to make sure that we reach the big goal for everybody. I'm forgetting one thing, so the 6 associations are the solar, wind, hydropower, there's the biogas, there's a biomass, and then there's the energy efficiency association. So these are the 6 that basically come together under the umbrella association, which is the umbrella alliance, which I am representing. So other than that, my day-to-day job that puts bread on my table, I actually work for Rocky Mountain Institute. We are based out in Colorado, the US. And our work is basically, we work with governments to secure and deploy funding effectively for meaningful increase of electrification and to reduce the energy prices. So Rocky Mountain Institute is very new on the continent, but most of the times we actually work with governments trying to answer that question, which I put here, is if you see the population in Africa is growing so rapidly, and our gains in electrification is actually risks being undermined if not good work is done in the sector, because if we are growing so fast and then we actually having very small gains. So Uganda, we have 22% electricity access. I think Kenya is looking at your power, least cost power development plan. So about 50 to 70%, which is very good. So, but then if we don't do much, it becomes a problem for us. So what we do at Rocky Mountain is try to work with governments and basically come up with integrated planning, seeing how on-grid and off-grid can function together, pilot projects, and also look at the energy leadership as a whole. And so this is some of the things that I think would be interesting. Now, flipping over to the topic that we're discussing, like I said, I'm no expert. I've been in the sector for some time and also benefited from a couple of energy audits, which I've done. I would like us to swing this a little bit because I know like Kenya, Tanzania, we all have energy efficiency strategies that are in place. However, how do we make this like integrating efficiency as a demand side, as a demand side management strategy, where we look at the role of efficiency in terms of our development, like the day-to-day development is quite important. But what I want us to discuss, to look at here, is if I was looking yesterday at the Kenyan strategy and the gains that you've made. And I saw, for example, you have about 2.4 gigawatts. And I think the peak capacity is about 1.6. Is that right? No, the peak capacity, peak time, your demand. Gigawatts, yes. Yes, gigawatts, about 1.6, 1.8. So you realize that there's some kind of supply, like kind of oversupply. The same thing is happening in Uganda. The same thing is happening in Ethiopia. In Uganda, we have about shy of 1 gigawatt of installed capacity, but our peak is about 600. So you realize that there's a lot of energy that's happening. I mean, like there's a lot of energy that's not being consumed. So how does energy efficiency then work in this place? Because the paradox here and the hypothesis here is how do you increase electrification on the other hand, where you're saying you're having an oversupply. And this is a big question for us to think, because part of the electrification agenda that we have to look into is seeing how do we stimulate demand, manage demand, but also integrate energy efficiency. So I think in these discussions, as experts, it's nice for us to just kind of visualize like the role of efficiency, because if we're making gains, we're saving this, which basically will, at the end of the day, will benefit the environment, will benefit, we create profits in our pockets, and basically governments have saved more money to do more things. It's important for us as the expert to say, like, how do we basically also look at the role of increasing electrification in the long run? So I think it's a preliminary discussion, and I'll have the questions now.
Good.
Clap for it. Good. Now the panel is open for discussion. I think we'll pick the questions, and the panel will answer. Who wants to start? Who wants to start the questions? As I start the question, maybe I can start with my storage. You know, I'm a consumer, I'm not an engineer. I've been wondering in this country, is there a way you can store power at the transformer so that that area is 24, even if the electricity goes, there is storage from there, either from the substation or from the transformer? I mean, that's an area I've been trying to ask myself. There is no technology in that area. That's a question. Maybe you give you a paper you write down because of your age. Questions, please. Andika kidogo mzee. Usisahau kidogo. Questions? Okay. As we still write the questions, what kind of reports? Give me just 2 or 3 reports that you think also that can go to the board, because I remember when you're dealing with energy, sometimes those reports don't reach the board. Yeah? But they don't reach the board. So some decisions are never made at the board level. And that's why you find small improvements that don't give the necessary backup of information. Yeah. So you tell us some of what kind of reports can we get from that system? Yeah. Any questions about Uganda? Big question about demand and efficiency. 3 years ago, when I was in Kenya Power, my KPI was to sell. Now, 3 years ago, I eat by ensuring that Kenya Power doesn't sell. Quite a paradox, but I think this is a big challenge now in the 3 countries. I think by next year we'll be paying more than nearly $60 to $80 million capacity, just paying because of excess power. I'm not sure how we can increase demand, and I think Uganda is facing the same. The dam is coming up very soon next year, so there will be excess power in the whole of the 3 countries. And yet we are doing efficiency programs. of which we know that they will reduce the consumption. And we want to ask the efficiency especially. Why is it that we don't have government-driven efficiency programs in terms of funding organizations? They have to be donor-driven if you want to, if you want to a factory. There are a lot of PE funds that are doing that. In India, there is a bank that really you can go and get money for refurbishing to energy efficiency. So we can start. Any questions? I have a lot of questions for them here.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Joshua, Secretary General Electricity Consumer Society of Kenya. My question is directed to the panel. I'm glad that we are spending a good energy in focusing in reference to do with this innovation of how to produce energy. But much as you're doing the good work, I don't know whether you come up with any modalities on how you can be able also to work on the legislation, because as much as you do innovation and you come up with good power production process, if the environment is hostile, where consumers are engaged in some level of legal aggression, where they cannot be able to enjoy the so-called, what my friend was just talking of, there is excess power, but if you look at the cost of energy, it is very high. That tells you something about legislation. So are you doing anything or thinking of taking any step to give backup? Apart from innovation, you can also support the consumers by forwarding certain kind of legislative agendas which can bring or create some positive environment for consumers to find reasonable cost as far as they're using whatever product. Thank you.
I think that question I will direct to Alexander. Still, you work with government. And also, any more questions? Further questions as we give them a chance to answer? Yes?
Thank you very much. My name is Albert. My question goes to Mr. Shabir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation you had earlier on. My question is on storage. Yeah, so you know these companies like M-Copper that are trying to promote access to power in the rural communities where there is no access to grid. And the challenge that has been there is that the systems, the plug and play systems that they try to push to those areas have this challenge where after 1 year the batteries just die. And so I think some of these people are trying to take advantage of these people, and because they are not giving them full information. They of course, you know that the batteries have cycles, and so when they give you these systems, you charge your phone, you watch TV, you know, you use it for lighting, and then after some time, you know, it just shut down. And then there's nothing you can do about it, and then you're stuck. So what do you think can be done? Because initially when it started, it was a good, they were good systems, they could last 3 years. But I think right now, they are trying to devise ways of making more money, and it has become a challenge. So probably if you can also give your input on what can be done to rectify this. Thank you.
Good.
Just as a simple question, I haven't heard anyone mentioning about nuclear power. So my question is if we can be able to touch on that area, because Kenya has plans to set up one. So having people from South Africa, whom I believe they have a power plant, can be able to touch on that area, give us the pros and cons on that.
Good, thank you. Maybe we can, 2 minutes each, you can answer the questions.
Yeah. Good. James, regarding the moderator's question, when there is power failure from KPC, is it possible to have some sort of storage near the transformer? There is what you call upstream and downstream. If the fault is downstream after the transformer, you can't do anything about it. Power and lighting have to come and restore the power or find the fault and correct the fault, and you get back the power. But upstream, if there is a fault, yes, just after the transformer, today batteries are available. As I mentioned, redox batteries. This is reduction oxide batteries. And these are batteries which can store power up to 10 hours, depending on the capacity. And this can, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there is a cost of storage. And this cost of storage is going down. Like redox batteries have a life of over 25 years, proven life of 25 years. Almost 15 to 20,000 cycles is the life of the redox batteries. So the cost of storing is less than about 3-4 cents, which can easily be borne by the utility company. So there is a solution. The other question was from, you said, Albert? Yeah, regarding battery life for rural areas. It's a very difficult question to answer. The batteries have to be managed properly, and there is maintenance on the battery, depending on what type of battery has been used. If it is just lead acid battery, float or flood type, there is an electrolyte in there which has to be looked after. You know, the water has to be added to it, and it should not be overcharged or overused. The battery is designed for, let's say, 5 LED bulbs and maybe a TV to give you that much power. After installation, this gentleman, whoever is owner of the system, may have added another 10 bulbs. He is overusing the batteries, and that will reduce the battery life. Lead acid batteries have these days 1,000 cycles life. That is, you charge and discharge per day is 1 cycle. So 1,000 cycles, 1,000 to 1,500 cycles is almost 1,500 days. 1,500 days. You know, 4 years, 5 years, the batteries can last. Next to lead acid batteries is lithium-ion batteries. The cost is twice of lead acid, but the life is 3 times more. Lithium-ion batteries, and they don't need that much maintenance. And that can last you for about 10 years without problems. There are other batteries as well, you know, as I say, redox batteries. Thank you.
Are they available in the market here? In this country?
Yes, lithium batteries are available.
Okay.
Terrific. So I'll answer the question about reporting. First, in the reports that we've already found to be useful, then one of the reports that I think will be useful, and then I'll encourage you all to come tell me what reports you would find most useful afterwards. So in terms of the 6 factories that we're already working with here in Kenya, the reports that we found most useful, first, kilowatt hours per production unit. So if their production is in kilograms, well, their production is in any unit, we have a way for them to enter that easily, and therefore see the kilowatt hours consumed per unit of production. We've noticed that for factories that are just using bills, that can actually be quite a challenge to manage energy well, because if production increases, your energy use increases, and then you can't even notice if you become more efficient. So having an easy way for the production staff to enter production and then correlate that number immediately in real time with the kilowatt hours is by far the most useful report that we see. Kilowatt hours per kilogram, kilowatt hours per ton, kilowatt hours per stem, whatever that number is for them, we let them tailor it. The second one is around peak demand. Being able to report back on exactly when peak demand was hit for a week or for a month allows them to then figure out what was causing that peak, whether there were non-critical loads that could be turned off in the future, and therefore save on that peak demand charge and save KPLC the trouble of diesel generation during those times of peak demand. And this is one where also the real-time alerts are very helpful as well. It's helpful to know in the past when you hit your peak demand, but even more helpful to get an alert when you're about to hit it, so you can then react real time and address that problem. Third report that our factories are already finding helpful is idle time of equipment. So this we report back from the energy data. You can tell real time whether a piece of equipment is on fully loaded, on partially loaded, idle, or off. So we just quantify the percentage of time that each piece of equipment spends in each of those states and report back on uptime, idle time, and off time by equipment, which then allows the factory manager to follow up and address the bright spots where shifts have really high uptime and great usage of their equipment, and then also the challenges where uptime might be lower due to power outages or any other challenge. The fourth report, and this is the last one that we're already finding to be extremely helpful, is because we have real-time SMS alerts sent through the system when there's a power quality challenge of under voltage, whether a piece of equipment has been left on too long, etc. Those alerts can be sent to anyone throughout the factory. It doesn't have to be someone with full access to our system. And so being able to receive a weekly report or daily report of every single alert that was sent is quite helpful to the factory managers in identifying the equipment that's most troublesome or the areas of the factory that might be having the most power quality challenges. The last report that we haven't mastered yet, we've just been anecdotally finding useful, is when the pattern of energy use of a piece of equipment changes. That will often signal a problem with that equipment before it actually goes down in the middle of a shift. So being able to identify when the pattern of use has changed is something that we're really excited about, being able to alert people and make energy even more relevant to production and maintenance staff than it is already. And again, I'd encourage you to come find me afterwards if you have reports that you like or that you think would be useful. I would love to build those in. I think you all are the experts in all of this.
Where is Wambuyo Farmer's Choice? That must be music for you, eh?
So I think I'll take a couple of questions here. I covered two of them. I think I'll handle it into four. One, the issue of tariffs. Why tariffs are going down? I think that was your question, right? I'm going to answer it from the perspective of Uganda, but I think I'm very sure it's something that we share this common. So, with many governments, like you see, for example, in our study, we saw that a lot of African countries are putting in a lot of money to basically set up utilities and to maintain the environment, to put up the investment in generation. At the same time, if you look at how much they're spending, for example, about $10 billion US per year is what the consumer spends in Sub-Saharan Africa to light his home. So if you look at the emerge is that generally the cost of electricity is very expensive, and this basically results because we have a lot of IPPs coming in, and what happens is the governments are not investing in, I would just say generally, I would say for our case, the government then have that amount of money to basically run its own, like basically to invest in huge systems that basically lower the price. So what you do is we open up the electricity market and allow the IPPs to come in. So when IPPs come in, they have to sign the power purchase agreement, and you have to make it a little bit cost-reflective tariffs at the end of the day so that they can basically get their money out. So most of the cases is that you have an expensive capital that's coming in, expensive investment that's coming in to set up these power plants. At the end of the day, somebody is locked up into a 50-year deal with the government, and he says, well, it is take or pay. And that is where that comes in. In Uganda, the tariff is about 22 cents. I think it's quite higher than yours. Yours is about 18 cents. Then what does that mean? It means that everybody has a pitch on the cost of electricity. So, and because of this, there has been a very big lobby group where the government, the president actually went out of his way and promised the large industries 5 cent tariff. Now, the question is, how will this be possible? Because if you look at the generational cost, the real levelized cost of electricity, I mean, we cannot make 5 cents is already quite low. But this is some of the lobby groups. So that means that government will have to pitch from it, so like to give subsidies in to lower that price if we have to realize that. So that question usually many governments are stuck because you're having a lot of expensive capital coming in, which is private side. The private sector is investing into the energy sector, which makes electricity very expensive. And we did basically a hypothesis for us as Rocky Mountain Institute in Uganda. We realized that if Uganda continues with its pattern, because of continuing to generate, like to put in new supply, the tariff will not necessarily go down, because then these people are tied into these long PPAs, and that would mean that government will have to basically keep maintaining the tariff very expensive. What's the solution? So the recommendation is there are also a lot of system losses. And if governments actually put emphasis on basically reducing system losses, distribution losses, production, you can basically salvage a certain amount. From our study, about 100 megawatts is basically lost just in the system losses, which actually, if government put more emphasis basically developing a good grid, a strong grid, you can actually salvage that kind of energy. On energy efficiency, and I think it was your question, but I captured it as energy, I think the need for energy financing. I think in a room full of experts like this, we know that energy efficiency, in a case like this where Kenya and Uganda are having tariffs which allow industries to basically push for energy management systems to be put in place, there's a great opportunity for us to pick on this. But that would mean that it is nice that while we do this work here, it's good to have kind of this investment grade kind of like work that basically encourages banks, the financial sector, to come in and say, because sometimes the market can basically run by itself. So because you find that the banks are looking for viable projects, and if these viable projects are there, banks always want to work in for it. So in other words, what I'm saying is there's a possibility of increasing financing that is coming into the sector, and there's possibility of having something like energy management, energy management companies, the ESCOs, energy service companies coming in. So this is where we need to be going. I think those were the two questions. I want just to add on to the question on energy storage. I'm writing a PhD on that, something like that. But then just to give you a small lens, is that right now the world actually is going so far. Lithium cells are dropping the price actually very soon. In the next 3 years or so, you will be having very cheap batteries because of the car industry is going in, battery prices are dropping very, very fast. And I think for large system and utility-based system, lithium batteries are going to be the big thing. The other question that we have to answer in the future is, how do we dispose them? But that will be something for maybe when we are all dead. The next generation will look at that. Yeah, sorry, it's a bad joke. Yeah, then the other thing, this is probably still in the laboratories, but I saw in Germany, there is a lot of research being done around hydrogen storage. And I saw this because, so wind is very intermittent, solar also is something, even this very small hydro behaves like an intermittent source with climate change. But what happens is, what companies are doing, the latest research is looking at, do you use fuel cells to capture hydrogen, you store it, and later on you re-inject it. So in that way, you basically stabilize your grid and you stabilize supply. Thank you.
Wow, a lot of knowledge. And I think due to time, I think you have seen the potential here. So you can engage them more during your lunch and the networking session. To my friend of the Electricity Consumer Association, yes, I've been in that panel of doing the bills, the electricity, the energy bill, and all those stories. But I think what we have not done is to communicate well why the tariff is at that level. 6 years ago when Kibaki was the president, he gave the country, he gave us two options. That time was Kenya Power. Either we bring in IPPs or we go into darkness 4 to 6 hours a day. And our neighboring countries took that step. They went into 4 to 6 hours for nearly 2-3 years, Tanzania. And we brought in the IPPs. But one of the biggest challenges we have is wastage of power. And I think the utilities are not doing enough to build capacity on wastage of power and water. You go today, you are brushing your teeth. What do? You open the tap. You brush when the tap is still running. Yeah, so even in energy, there is a lot of wastage in energy, of which we should be encouraged. And the use of renewable energy also is still very expensive, and government needs to do more about it, especially using energy for productive. We have a lot of renewable energy that is not for productive use. It's just for lighting. And lighting. We need renewable energy for productive use so that you can be able to afford to put the electricity. In fact, there's a program we want to work with Kenya Power, whereby they will encourage productive use of renewable energy so that the farmer or the person can afford to get a connection of 15,000 to be able to pay. I think those are the areas that we look at. And I know you have, congratulations, you had out of court agreement. You are following up that case very well. But I think it's something that for once, we are seeing that there is a move to protect, your mother somewhere. I was in charge of restructuring. But when I left, that person at the village, there was no way the restructuring protected him. We only protected Bamburis and all those. But the guy there has never been protected. So with those 3 remarks, I think, thank you very much. You should clap for the moderator. Yes, and you wanted? Okay, because umevaa kofia and your age allows you 20 seconds, yes.
Now you said that Kibaki told you to bring in IPPs, and the problem we have here now, why we still have IPPs yet we are producing more. Okay, Kibaki told you to bring in IPP, and the problem we have now with IPP now that you cannot shed them because they were given long period contracts. Was there no escape clause that at the time when we get more power, we'll be able to tell them back up and go?
I think what happens when you are doing IP, by the time a guy comes here, you must give him a guarantee. Okay? He's bringing his own equipment, everything to set up. You have gone around Mombasa Road, you have seen that Gulf Energy.
Yeah.
Putting up that is billions. And if the rains come next month, you can't tell him to walk away. But what has happened is that their consumption has reduced. So they are only used when there is a challenge. So they are not used, in the dry season they are used more. That's why the bill goes high. But when it rains in December, January, February, you will see the bills go down because they are really used. Sometimes it's easier to let them go on until we build capacity, we move away from we reduce the hydros and all that so that we have a stable supply of power. Thank you.
Thank you very much.